Buenos dias, dzień dobry, hola, ¿qué tal? Ciao. Welcome, Ken at 10. How are you today? Did you see that sunset last night? If you didn't, I refer you to the post beneath this one, sir. Have a look. It was absolutely wonderful. I do love a good sunset. And in fact, I did a quick pic of the sunrise this morning as well. I just love the sun. Energizing, isn't it? Fantastic. Market has actually gone a little bit crazy, as you may have noticed. We're literally finding that we are absolutely ran off our feet. Everything that comes on the market, of course, we are careful with pricing to make sure everything's right, but we're finding it's very, very busy indeed. And I want to talk to you a little bit about gazumping, because it's not something we like, but it's an inevitable consequence of a busy market. To you buyers out there, I know it can be hard to understand, but agents work for sellers, and although they can appear to be your friend, and certainly we want to be your friend, because you know what, buyers become sellers. So it is important to us to have the longer term relationship with all of our people. One of the great privileges of what I do, especially now, is literally, I would say once a week I meet a client who says, we bought this property through you 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and that always makes me smile. But the point being that buyers become sellers, and the important thing is that we do owe buyers a duty of care, but we owe sellers a duty of obtaining the best possible price for them. Now, the best price might not necessarily be the highest offer. It might be that we consider that somebody on a 90% mortgage, for instance, as opposed to somebody who's cash or a 50% mortgage, is a greater risk. So in those circumstances, if we had a number of offers come in, and it's quite common, you know, that we get a property on the market and then all of a sudden you've got lots of offers, and then we end up sticking our hands up and saying, hold on, we're going to have to go to best and final offers and ask people what their best bids are, and then approach our client and have a discussion about the circumstances around the various buyers. Someone, for instance, might bid, you know, 50,000 more than another, but may have a property to sell. And then we have to speak to our client about how realistic is the price of the property that they're trying to sell. Where is it? Are we confident that it's going to sell? Is it worth the wait? And this is why, by the way, we always say you should sell first, because you know, if you can't use time as a weapon, then it's very difficult to have a good negotiating edge if you have a property which is not yet under offer and you're trying to buy another. But if you offer enough, it may be that the client says, hey, I'll wait a little while for that extra 50k. On the other hand, if it's a smaller amount, sometimes clients will say, actually, for instance, we had one recently where we had a number of offers. We had a property that was on the market for offers over, and what happened was we had a number of offers, and one particular buyer was cash and one was 50% cash. And then there was very little between the two of them, really, literally very little. And it was a case of, well, you know, which one do we go for? Do we go for the one that has the 100% cash, or the other one that's actually offered slightly more and is bridging? And frankly, there was a hair between these buyers, you know, it was that close. And then, you know, the client asks you about the people, how they were. And of course, just so happened in this case that both sets of people were nice, were very responsive, were professional. We had no reason to doubt that either buyer could do it. In the end, the solution was we went with a cash buyer, and we're going to communicate with the other buyer today and tell them that they haven't got it, but there'll be first backup, and the cash buyer will have 4 weeks and only 4 weeks to complete the transaction. And there's no reason why they can't do that within that time frame, given that there's no finance to get. Finance is always the most difficult thing to get in place. And nowadays, 90% mortgages particularly are a bit like 100% mortgages were years ago. So if you haven't been in the market for a while, you might not know. But 90% mortgages are rare, not only rare, but the circumstances surrounding you, whether you've been furloughed, whether part of your salary is overtime, are much more stringent than if you have a 15, 20 or 25% deposit. The magic number really is 50% deposit. 75% is where you can get away with most things. Above that, it's really at the discretion of the lender. 90% for a client, if you're the only person offering, is more risky than any other type of buyer in the market. There are 95% mortgages as well. And it's more risky unless there's an agreement in principle and we're sure and confident that the lender has enough capacity to accept the deal when it goes through, because lenders they allocate a certain amount of money, normally in the hundreds of millions, to the schemes that they offer. So they might offer a 95% mortgage, and they might allocate 100 million for 95% mortgages. And when that's exhausted, they may not offer any more. Now, this is not financial advice. That's something for our IFAs to deal with. And if you need that, we've got a wonderful financial advisor who won't be taking part in the London Marathon. Did you hear that? London Marathon not going ahead this year, apart from for the pros? That's a shame, isn't it? Love the London Marathon. It's one of the great London events for me. It's such a sense of occasion, you know, see everybody running, the bars, all the bands, and not happening as many things this year. Always a frustration, isn't it? But in terms of gazumping, what I would say to you is try and be patient. We try and respect the process. We try and understand that there are going to be winners and losers, and the losers are always going to be upset. So we do our best to make sure that they understand why another buyer has got the property and they haven't. It's not always about money, as I've said. It can be. The other people are just in a better position. But we always try and sit ourselves in the positions of the people that have made offers, and we know how frustrating it can be in a busy market to actually try and secure something. My advice to you is, if you think something's exceptional value, then put your best foot forward very early on. Because another way that we might judge offers is if one offer comes in at, for instance, 300 and eventually goes to 400, we might judge that as less solid than one that came straight in at 400, thinking that they're more likely to push it through at the price and not try and renegotiate later. So try and think like an agent if you're making an offer. You know, remember that agents have the responsibility of their selling clients at heart. So, or they should have. They don't always, I have to say. For some agents, it's just, we've got the asking price, there you go, sir. With us, it's not that way at all. With us, it's, well, we've got the asking price twice, so we're not yet convinced necessarily that that's the best price that can be achieved for the client. So sometimes we'll just advise the client, look, just hang on while we continue to market, and we'll tell the offers that they're under consideration, but our instructions are to continue to market, because in the end, our responsibility is to you, the seller, getting you the best possible price. And we do that by making sure that we've exposed the property for a sufficient amount of time that everybody's had a chance to look, and we can really gauge the market. Because who's the best judge of what a property's worth? Is it the buyer or the seller, the agent? I think it's always the buyer. And so the offers that come in from the buyers really will guide us. You know, one of the questions we always ask when a viewer comes back from having a look at the property is, how does it compare? Is it one of the best you've seen? Because if it's one of the best you've seen, then we know price-wise we're in the right area. If you've seen several and they're better in the same price range, then we know we're in the wrong area possibly, because that buyer that's viewed that property this evening has probably viewed 5 others this week in the same price range, whereas us as agents might have only seen 1 this month in that price range. So it's really important to listen to the feedback of applicants, because the market is a constantly changing thing. It's fluid. And at the moment, it's running hot. We expect that to continue for a while now, especially until the end of furlough, maybe even beyond that, and towards the deadline next year. I think that prices are going to peak towards that deadline and possibly fall off afterwards. So that'll be an interesting one to watch. But yeah, that's it for today. But if you're thinking of offering on a property and you're not sure how to do it, my advice is, number 1, make sure your finances are in order and you can report that. Number 2, make sure that you get your offer in as early as you possibly can. Number 3, make sure that the agent's confident in you and your ability to proceed. And that comes down to making sure that you have plenty of dialogue with the agent. And, you know, that way, hopefully, you'll have the best opportunity of getting the property. But remember, if it's miles ahead of anything else you've seen, make sure that you put the best offer you can forward in today's market, especially here in London, because it's hotting up right now. Certainly over the last week, we've seen it get a lot busier. So, hope you have a fantastic day. The sun here is so hot, it must be hotter than Saudi Arabia today. Have a fantastic day. We're looking forward to a busy one, lots of valuations and things, and we'll see you again very soon. Take care.